Hey, this is Jon Gordon with the Power of Positive Summit and Positive You. And today I have Sean McVay with me. Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing good, John. I appreciate you having me.
Sean, I can now call you Super Bowl winning head coach. When you walked off that field in that moment, you just won a Super Bowl. I got to ask you, like, how did you feel? What kind of feelings were going through you in those moments?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think, John, like we've talked about, what was so special about this team is it was genuinely a group that wanted to do that for somebody else other than themselves, whether it was Andrew Whitworth, Aaron Donald, Eric Weddle, Matthew Stafford. There's so many players that they were playing for one another. And I was just so happy for so many people that I love and care about to be able to share that moment with those guys and watch the relief and the joy that it brought them. It was great. It was definitely an exhausting game, a little closer for my liking than I would have preferred, but it's a special moment, and that's going to be a year that I'll never forget, John, without a doubt.
You told me the other day when we talked, you said that there was a feeling that you had in terms of you wanted it more for them than for yourself. And that actually took a lot of pressure off you, because when you want it for someone else, you just want them to succeed and you're not thinking about you, you're thinking about them. Talk about what that feeling is like and that thinking is like.
Yeah, I think a real peace and a stillness comes with that, John. I had a really good conversation a few months back with Neil Elitros, Dr. Neil Elitros, one of our team doctors, and I've gotten to have a great relationship with him. And he was talking about, the difference between really passion and purpose. And, I've always been passionate, where you're intrinsically motivated and you're competitive to try to be the best coach you can be. But a purpose is where, it's about something more than yourself, your selfish ambitions. And I think our team had a real purpose of truly embodying that we, not me, culture that we wanted to embody, and truly loving, the opportunity to compete, but loving the ability to play at your highest level, coach at your highest level, because you want it for somebody else other than yourself. And that purpose really gave me a peace and a stillness. And I don't think you can have that unless you're doing it for and with people that you truly love on the, on the way to trying to achieve a world championship. And there was a real joy in that journey. And looking back on it, I'm glad that we were able to kind of take it a moment at a time, even though there were definitely some stressful moments. But sometimes those stressful moments make it all the more sweet, because that's why you appreciate it, is because of the journey, not just being a smooth sail.
And knowing you had this incredible stillness. You did seem peaceful, at least watching you.
Yeah, you mean I wasn't
TV.
a basket case like you normally know me?
Not at all. You were just calm. You're peaceful. You're very optimistic, as you've always been. Do you think that stillness came from the confidence that you had in your players and in your team also?
I think so. And I think a lot of instances, it goes back to things that, that we clicked on immediately when we first met 5-6 years ago, talking about our core beliefs. And sometimes you, like you say all the time, you got to be able to talk to yourself and not listen to yourself, and tell yourself to be in the moment, to be totally and completely present, to truly trust the process and the preparation, so that when you're in the midst of that competition, you can be at peace and be still and try to make the best decisions. And then whatever happens, you can be comfortable with and have no regrets. And that truly is where I feel like we were as a team with our players and our coaches. And fortunately, our guys delivered in those big moments. And here we are, being able to talk about what a special year and special finish it was.
What I loved most is watching the game and then the mic'd up moments and hearing the love that you had for your players, they had for you, and the love they had for each other. Like, they would walk around, I love you, man. And you could just hear in the comments, this was a special group. This was a connected group. How important is love in being a strong team, having grit, and also going through tough moments like that and winning a Super Bowl? Like, people laugh sometimes when you say love, but it seemed like it was a big factor for your team.
It was. I think it was the most important factor, John. And I'm like you, when I go back and watch that, I still get emotional and teary eyed, because you can't fake that emotion. It's one thing, to be able to say it, but then you can really see, man, the tone, the way guys are interacting with one another. There was a real love for each other. And those things, they carry you through. Love is the only thing that's really stronger than that fear that we talk about all the time. And this team really embodied that. I think the other thing that was so special about it is this was the best group. We've always had great leadership since I got here, 5 years ago. But this year was as special of a true ownership and autonomy from the players, the leadership, the ability to be able to kind of, it's let them use their platform the right way. And that collaboration that we always want to exist between coaches and players. We were a unified group. We were a connected group, and the adverse moments, I think, enabled us to be able to stay connected and even draw near to one another. And that's why I think you saw us demonstrate that in the playoff run in moments like the Tampa game, San Francisco, and the NFC Championship, and then ultimately some of the things that unfolded in the Super Bowl. I mean, if we weren't a tight-knit team, we don't win any of those 3 games that I alluded to, when you have to win 4 of those playoff games to get to the World Championship.
You see that, a play here, a play there. If you don't have that key moment in that game, you don't win that game. And so it really is the connection. It is the optimism. It is your team coming together to win those games. Let's talk about that Tampa game briefly. Come down, Tom Brady scores, right? Yeah. You got a less than a minute left. What does that look like now for you? What are you thinking in that moment? And was it just a great moment to see Matthew make that play to Cooper?
It was. And, I think in the midst of when you could feel some things going, where the momentum was shifting a little bit, in a lot of instances, I've been on some teams where you've got a lead and you start to kind of relinquish that lead for different reasons. There was some uncharacteristic things that occurred with our team, but I never sensed panic. Guys making some uncharacteristic decisions. Things happen where you end up turning the football over 4 times. They did a good job of getting back to tying the football game, but my favorite part about that, John, what I'll always remember about this team is when you have a lead like we did and they end up coming back and tying it, usually that would be, all right, hey, we're folding, but I never felt any sort of flinch. I never felt anybody blink. I just felt, hey, let's play the next play. This is uncharacteristic. We believe it. We know it. We expect it. And now let's go make the next play. And the look in Matthew and our offensive guys' eyes was unbelievable. We take the first play of the drive, where they end up tying it up, and then you're saying, hey, we go get in field goal range, and now we win this game as time expires. Is how you draw it up. And the first play of the drive, Matthew sees a man coverage with 2 safeties, and he thinks he's going to go Michael Vick and run right up the middle. And now we're sitting at 2nd and 11. And in a lot of instances, you'd say, hey, all right, man, now it's going to be really tough. But what our guys did is they didn't believe it. They played the next play. Matthew and Cooper, great protection up front. Matthew ends up delivering a great ball to Cooper, who ends up making his DB fall. And then it's a gain first down. They bring a 0 blitz, and Cooper and Matthew end up connecting on what's going to go down as one of the great plays in NFL history, I believe. We get it clocked, and then there we are moving on to the NFC Championship at home. But it was a special moment, special players making it come to life, John. But that belief in themselves and each other, I think, is what enabled us to be able to stay the course through a lot of adversity that we faced, some of which was self-inflicted, but you do give Tampa credit. And that kind of embodies the team's resilience. And that was, in a lot of ways, a lot of credit goes to the culture, but most importantly, the players' belief in the culture they've built.
Love that. That was a gutsy play call as well. Did you visualize that play happening like that when you called that play?
I would say this, to say that I exactly saw it going down like that wouldn't be totally accurate, but we did feel like there was a chance that, all right, we get the stopped clock. And in a lot of instances, it kind of lulls the defense. We ended up still going tempo in that situation. And Coach Bowles is aggressive, and he's a great defensive coordinator. They brought a pressure. They were a little bit later to hit it. Sue still won clean up the middle, and Matthew had to make a great throw off drift with Winfield and good coverage on Cooper. It was great players making a good play, and say, oh man, Sean's a good coach. I'll tell you why I'm a good coach is because I got guys like that making the plays. And there's a lot of instances where that wouldn't have worked out without those guys bringing it to life.
Incredible. So let's talk about 5 years ago. We met. You were a rookie coach. You were actually 30 years old when we met.
Yeah.
You have grown so much in so many ways as a leader. In your own leadership awareness, how much have you grown, and in what ways do you think you've grown as a leader?
Well, I think experience is one of the best learning tools, especially I always talk about repetition is the mother of learning, but I think the experience, if taken the right way, and when you're around great people like yourself or my dad or so many great leaders that we have in our organization, you're able to truly evaluate and say, okay, how can I learn from my mistakes? How can we continue to do things we've done well at an even higher level? And how can we not lose sight of the core beliefs that have really helped us establish a foundation? Sometimes it's, when you accumulate that experience, you feel like you're gaining knowledge and it can get thinned out. And the best things that I'll sometimes do is go back to, all right, what were those beliefs that we had when we first met in year one? And don't get too far away from that core while still having that agility to always learn and use experiences as a chance to learn. I think I've gotten more comfortable too, understanding that when you do have to make tough decisions, Knowing that the best way is to be able to be totally and completely honest, clear, open, and transparent. And when you love and care about people so much, sometimes you have to understand that the decisions you have to make for the betterment of the group aren't always in alignment with people that you really love, but they'll appreciate the honesty and the transparency and that communication we talk about all the time, over time. And everybody has their own way of going about it, but it's just learning. It's continuing to surround yourself with great people and really, continuing to have a purpose like we talked about. And I feel like that comes and becomes more and more clear when you do it with people that you love. But it's always that never ending process of trying to get better. And when you do it with people that you really care about, it makes it easy. And I certainly love football. And I'll be, hopefully doing this for a few more years until those other rumors start coming up.
So when we met, we talked about the core values. We talked about principles, and you had some real clear values and principles you wanted to share. You knew what you wanted your team to be in. Great leaders build great cultures. And one of those was we, not me. Yeah. It's the center of the pyramid you created. But then to see that come to life in this team, that doesn't happen by accident. You had to intentionally build that. What did you do, and what did your leaders do with you along the way to build this culture of we, not me? Take us through just some practical things that you do along the way to make sure you're reinforcing this we, not me culture.
Sure. I think the first thing, John, is you've got to onboard and be around the right people that have a heart for others. And they are, all of us have some innate selfishness to us, but hey, how can we be as selfless? How can we continue to embody the things that we want that we, not me culture to stand for? The football character, the communication, being committed to a process, being a connected team, and then as important as anything, being consistent with how we go about those things through the good, but I think even more importantly, through the bad. And you really empower the right types of people. When you've got guys that are at the foundation, like an Andrew Whitworth, like an Aaron Donald that was already in place, and then you start adding guys like Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, you bring Matthew Stafford into the fold. You've got guys that, come into the fold late in the mix this past year, like Eric Weddle. You bring on a Leonard Floyd. There's so many guys, Jalen Ramsey, that have been instrumental in creating it, but it's all about the people. And that's the thing I've been the most proud of. But I think it's something that it's more of a consistent way that we approach the building, as opposed to having somebody recite, all right, what is the we, not me culture about? It's something you can feel, the way that they treat one another, the way that they compete for one another. Even something as subtle as, whether you have to say it or not, when guys break it down, hey, family on three, those things that has a compounding effect. But most importantly, it's with the right type of people that you empower and how they go about just being consistent and committed to a process that's all about embodying that culture, and how that really serves us well, through the inevitable good and bad that an NFL season and any journey you go on will take you through.
And a big part of it is that your players know that you and your staff, you care about them, you communicate to them, you have a relationship with them. How important is it as a coach and a leader to have a relationship with your team members?
I think it's vital. It's always about the people. That's the most important thing. And, from our conversations, I'm such a huge fan of Jon Gordon and all the things that he stood for. And he used to say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is so true. And from a player's perspective, and I think coaches in the same light, if you're with somebody that you say, I really enjoy being around this person, and then they can help me improve in my craft, whether that's being a better player or a better coach, and I enjoy being around them, and I believe that they're invested in me, man, you're checking two boxes that I think are paramount for creating and establishing that culture and being able to sustain it over a period of time. And it takes a lot of work. It takes the right type of people, most importantly, but those are the things that have been the most beneficial. And even some of the things that, I've really learned from you, not getting too far away from those things, making sure that you stay grounded and you stay humble through the good. That's the thing that I think has been important. And you see a lot of guys that have had a lot of success in our organization, but they're unchanged in terms of the humility, but the drive that also allows them to be able to connect. But that humility is such a big thing that you want to maintain.
Yeah, one thing I see with the Rams is I don't really see guys talking to the media negatively about the organization. You don't really see guys when they're going through a challenge, or when the media tries to create something, when a player's injured or Todd Gurley was injured and the media kept on trying to make it into something and it never became something. And it seems like because players know that there's relationships, because you're doing it together, because there's teamwork, because there's great communication, Is that something you're intentional with? Do you talk about that as a staff, or is that something just happens because you have great coaches who lead that way?
No, you definitely want to be intentional, but it also is a combination of what comes naturally to the people you want to onboard. And I think at the end of the day, John, people just don't want to be surprised. There's inevitably information that you have to deliver in a leadership role or just with what we do that isn't always good. But if people feel included and inclusive in what's going on and they're not caught off guard, usually you can handle it. And then people always understand, even though they might not always agree with it. And so I've certainly made mistakes along the way, but I don't think you can ever be a good enough communicator. Usually that is the root of every single problem that you have in any sort of relationship, whether it be with my fiance, Veronica, with our players, with our coaches. Say, if I had communicated better from the jump or displayed a little bit more patience, this probably isn't something that we're talking about. And I think the ability to say I was wrong and how we move forward with that accountability is a big part of that. But it's, and then the listening is a huge part. Wade Phillips used to say this, John, and I thought it was great, is listening is a skill. And I'm one of those people that will talk until I'm blue in the face. And sometimes I just need to shut the heck up and listen a little bit more. And I've heard it said, you listen, you learn, and then you're able to lead the right way. And it goes in that order, not any other way.
That's so good. I think about my relationship with my wife, and our most difficult moments was when I didn't communicate well, right? So communication is everything. I always say where there's avoided communication, negativity will fill it.
I say that. I steal that all the time from you.
I'm glad you do, because it is so important how we do things and how we communicate. And talk about, with this team, you have a real focus on competitive greatness. That's a huge part of your culture. It's a big part of your pyramid that you created to represent your values for the organization and for your team. What does competitive greatness mean to you?
Yeah, competitive greatness in its simplest form is all the things that our culture embodies coming together, at those critical moments, where we define competitive greatness as being your best when your best is required. And really for us, our best is required all the time. And it's not even about whatever the result is. It's about doing everything that's in alignment with our process, our preparation, the procedures that put us in those moments, the way that we do things as far as our characters included that put us in those moments to be our best. And that consistent approach to always trying to embody competitive greatness is what our players have done, what I think our coaches have done, and what we want to always strive to do. And I think, it's been embodied by our biggest and our best leaders. And when that happens, it has a trickle down effect, and it's a really, really powerful thing. And that's why I think empowering the right leaders, both from your coaches and your players, is so vital. And those guys carrying the torch, and then sometimes getting out of the way and letting those guys do their thing, is the best thing you can do as a leader.
Your dad is an amazing leader. You've learned so much from him, growing up with him, and also just as an adult. Talk about your dad's influence in your life in terms of leadership.
Yeah, well, he loves you, John, and he is. I mean, he's the best leader I've ever seen. I never realized when I did an internship with him when he was the general manager at the Fox affiliate in the San Francisco, Oakland market, how much I picked up just based on the way that he would interact with the 300 employees at KTVU, the respect, the way that he truly had an authentic approach to every single employee. Everybody felt valued. Everybody felt listened to. And while there's different roles and responsibilities in any arena that you're working with, whether it be a team or a television station, or when you're running leadership groups, it's okay, how can we demonstrate a care for the person involved, but also letting them know that their role is important, for what we're trying to accomplish collectively. And being able to create that real authentic value is what my dad, I think, did better than anybody I've ever seen. And we really try to do that. And just the way that I was raised and the core values that have been taught from he and my mom, Cindy, have been, so beneficial. And I don't think you realize that until you truly look back on it and you have the perspective of when you're growing up, it's like, yeah, Dad, Mom, I got it. And then you look back and you say, you know what, how lucky and how blessed I've been to have that example on so many things that I never really realized were just being ingrained in my heart and who I was as a person, that you really appreciate. That's helped, along the way.
Does your mom ever give you a call, like when you've been in a press conference and said something maybe not the right way? And does she ever call you and say, hey, Sean, what are you doing on that?
Oh, I tell you the word. Yes. And it's not necessarily coaching me up on what I said as much as the language that I'll use. She, Hard Knocks was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me with my mother, because, sometimes you forget your mic and you use some language, and she just, you don't ever want to disappoint your mother. And she said, you got to use better language than that. I said, you know what? You're right, Mom. And but she is so supportive, but she doesn't like it when she hears me use bad language. And so I got to be better about that.
I have to ask you this. You were a coach at such a young age, and you're also an incredible athlete and football player. You were, Mr. Football in the state of Georgia your senior year over Calvin Johnson. A lot of people don't know that. You were an incredible quarterback, though. And yeah, and again, you're so humble. You want to make sure that Calvin gets that recognition. But you had a great season, won a state championship, and then you went to play in college, and you had some injuries that prevented you from having an incredible career. You had a good career, but not a great career. But that made you go into coaching early on. Do you see, when you look back on your life now, that was also preparing you for being a young coach and being the kind of coach that could be at this level at this young of an age right now?
I don't think there's any doubt, John, because in a lot of instances, I used to place my self-worth on my production as a football player. And you didn't really have any sort of perspective because you hadn't really gone through any hardships. And really, this isn't hardships, but it did create a perspective where everything goes well in high school. You get a scholarship, to go play Division I football, and you got a lot of expectations. Where I was a third generation player at Miami of Ohio. They were a good program. Expected to go in there and really be a really good player. And things were going good early on in my career. And then I had some injuries that it didn't work out the way that I had wanted or the way that I had envisioned. And in a lot of instances, insecurities are brought to the forefront where you're thinking, all right, hey, maybe people don't love you and care about you as much because you think your worth is in your production as a football player. And in the midst of it, it was tough, because you did have a lot of pride that was put into that. And I think it helped create a perspective of what's real, understanding that you really should care about the people that care about you unconditionally without taking away the ability to want to be a great competitor, but also just to keep perspective on everything. And I think it helped me create be better as a coach because of the empathy, the understanding, and it's only exclamated when you're talking about some of the changes that occur with professional athletes, whether it's making tough decisions to trade them, if you have to release them, when they're retiring, how you help facilitate that transition. And so even though it was a small adversity looking back on it, not reaching some of the goals that I had set forth as a college player and having injuries cut some of those things short, definitely created a perspective. And some of the insecurities I had when I was that age, I think have helped me be a little bit more secure. While you're not naive to the fact that we all work through our own things to try to consistently really be still and be totally secure and have a perspective on where you really place your value. And that's in people that care about you unconditionally and living your life with the character that embodies the way you want to lead and influence and affect people in the right way.
That's so good. And I know that many of the coaches that have worked with you, several of them have now become head coaches, right? Yeah. So you have a coaching tree already, and it's a great tree. What is that like to have a coaching tree now? And also, how do you see it? Do you see yourself investing in these guys? Because I know that you're thrilled when they get head coaching jobs. You really are happy for them.
I am happy for them, but I'm not naive to the stress that comes with replacing great coaches. I think the best way I can put this, John, is, I never look at it. I'm too young to have that sort of coaching tree because it's about people working with us. I work with these guys. They don't work for me. And I truly believe that our people feel that way. We always say it doesn't matter who's right. It matters what's right. And I don't care what somebody's role or responsibility or their job title is. I care about how do we bring out the best in everybody and how can I continue to surround myself with people that are better than me. And I think when you do that and people feel like there's an investment in their ability to try to reach, their ultimate goals of if it's becoming a head coach, they know if they come here, they're going to be promoted. There's going to be a growth and we're going to positively push one another. And then I'm going to do whatever I can to try to help facilitate, them getting those opportunities. And they get it themselves. You can have a small part of it because that's what happened to me at a young age. And I think you're not far enough removed from it to appreciate people putting their arm around me, helping me along the way to become a head coach. And to see these other guys get to that level is a great result and reflection of the Rams' success. And then I think what that does in essence, John, is it attracts really good coaches that you can continue to attract that want to be in your building because they're saying, hey, it's a good place to work. There's going to be a positive competitive atmosphere where you're going to be pushed to get better as a coach. But if you continue to do a great job, there's going to be growth opportunities from within. And then there's opportunities that some of these guys have gotten head coaches from here when they've been in those leadership roles and really, done a great job earning those roles.
But it is stressful, as you said, to always have to replace these coaches and bring on new coaches and onboard them and get them into the fold. How do you approach that? Is it basically, okay, got to teach, got to coach, got to develop, got to collaborate, got to work with, got to really figure out how we work together? What's that process look like every time you bring on new coaches?
It's vital because what I think the main thing that you've realized is always having contingency plans in place with the expectation and anticipation you're going to lose some of your top leaders. And so identifying guys that are, most importantly, candidates to come in at a, not necessarily, I don't want to say entry level, but at some of these other positions. And then if those voids are created with people moving on, these are people that you can elevate from within. And, in a lot of instances, you look at it, or it's you go somewhere, you really shine, and then you come back. Like Liam Cohen, our new offensive coordinator, was with him for 3 years. He's very familiar with how we want to operate. He leaves to go to be the OC at Kentucky, does a great job. And then Kevin O'Connell gets a head job with the Minnesota Vikings. And now Liam has done a great job, really, being a coordinator on his own, but he knows how we want to operate. He did a lot of things that were in alignment with what we believe in, but also his own spin. And now you bring him back, and it's not like you're really having to train him. It's about, hey, we've had 3 years of continuity together, and now he's coming back to us. And some other examples, guys like Zach Robinson, who you were talking to me about, he's just continued to elevate from within, where he's our quarterback coach, passing game coordinator. And it's a combination of both, but making sure you identify great people that have a lot of upside when you do lose those great, coordinators and leaders that become head coaches or really continue to grow in their careers.
I love it. Sean, as we come to a close, I got to ask you, look back, see that 30-year-old who just got the job for the Rams. What would you tell that 30-year-old now of what you know now that you didn't know then? Is there anything you would have done differently, or is there anything that you would tell that 30-year-old to give advice to that young coach, that rookie coach?
Yeah, don't ever lose sight of being inside out as opposed to outside in. Understand that, all the good things can sometimes be temporary as well as the bad things, but don't get caught up in that. Invest in the people, surround yourself with high capacity, high character people. But like you always say, and I think it's so true, it's one thing to say, it's another thing to believe it and really instill it in terms of how you operate on a day-to-day basis. And I think it goes in alignment with things that I learned from you, John. Be inside out, not outside in. Do a lot of talking to yourself, not listening to yourself.
I appreciate that. And that means a lot.
It's true.
Speaking of which, you made a call towards the end of the game, right? It was 4th down, 4th and 1, and you do a handoff to Cooper as he's going in motion for that gain. Blown away by it. If that doesn't go well, if he doesn't get the first down, you're probably perceived as a coach who made a big mistake, and you probably lose that game, but you went for it. Are you thinking about that at all in that moment? Like, oh, if this doesn't go well, I'm sure you're not thinking about it, but what goes through your mind in that moment? And is it basically like, hey, we got a yard, we're going for it. There's a few minutes left. If we punt, we may not get the ball back. It was a bold call. A lot of people said you had to make the call. Other people said you didn't, but you made it.
Yeah.
Take us back to that moment.
Yeah, no, because in a lot of instances, with the time left on the clock, in the way our defense was playing, you say punt it away, trust they'll get a stop, and maybe we even get a shorter field. But I think thinking in some moments, from a coach's perspective, when a player's playing in the physical and mental capacity that it takes, when they're in the zone, it's different for a coach because it is exclusively mental. But I think at the end of the day, it's about people over the plays. Now, we felt like it was going to be a good play based on our short yardage preparation, but I don't know what it was, but in the moment, we as a coaching staff just felt like, hey, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to instill belief. And I didn't think it was reckless. And you're saying, you know what, I'm okay if it doesn't work out, handing the ball on a jet sweep to Cooper Kupp with the defensive structure that we anticipated, with the trust and confidence I had in Matthew and Cooper's ability to get that timed up to where kind of lulled Von Bell to sleep, where he was in a good position to make a play, but he hit it in enough time. And Bryson Hopkins makes a great block. But I was okay that, you got to be comfortable making tough decisions and live with the consequences. But I always remember, apart from the last dance that I tell to our team a lot, when a guy was talking about Michael Jordan, what made him so special is he was totally and completely present. He never worried about missing a shot that he hadn't taken yet. And in that moment, I wasn't necessarily thinking about the negative, but I was thinking about, I believe in Cooper Kupp and our offense's ability to make that play. And if it didn't work out, then I'm comfortable with the criticism that accompanies that, because that's an inevitable part of the job. And that is why you want to be inside out and not outside in, for the good. And if it doesn't go your way as well.
You led with so much optimism during the playoffs. It seems like the team had a ton of positivity, optimism on that run. Could you feel the belief? Could you feel the positivity? And what happens? Where does that come from? Because it's like you got this momentum that you see other teams have in years past. It came for the Rams. It came to you during that time.
It's the people and the consistent commitment to a process that's in alignment with giving you that quieted mind. And so, but I do believe too, when you choose to be something and it's not unrealistic to be that way, it does become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you can look at it as a bad or a good thing, but I don't care who you are. Everybody loves feeling believed in. No matter how mentally tough you are, you like being in an atmosphere and an environment where you feel like people believe in you and they want to put their arm around you and help you reach your highest potential. And they want to be able to see you succeed through those tough moments. And I think, you just continue to just believe that and instill it. And it's a powerful thing. And it's something that you can feel more than anything else. And I felt it with this team. I think there's always been a belief since we got here that it's just, we are going to be optimistic, but not unrealistic. There's a big difference between being optimistic, instilling belief and real tangible belief based on what you do, and having that line of unrealistic expectations. And so it's like you've said, it's not the Pollyanna positive, but it's hey, we're going to really have a commitment to things. We're going to do these things on a consistent basis. And that belief and that way that we pour into people as coaches, the way that we want to have our players pour into each other and vice versa, you just feel good about yourself, and you do have that belief and that conviction, and doesn't always work out, but more times than not, you're going to give yourself a chance for those percentages to sway in your favor.
You win a Super Bowl. How do you get the team to think positively, optimistic, and also have that competitive greatness to come back? How do you not get complacent? We know that Bill Walsh often feared success because he feared the team would get complacent and forget what made them successful. How do you remind the team of what it takes to be great going forward?
Well, I think the number one thing is you help these guys understand that each year is its own entity. And we talk about that all the time. What we did the previous year has nothing to do with what we're going to do moving forward. We can draw confidence on it, but we also know it's a new team, new year. There's new changes. Even though the goals remain the same, the commitment to our culture and the way we want that to be embodied is going to be the same. We're going to have some agility based on new personnel that we onboard, but this league is too difficult if you think the same things that you did the previous year are going to allow you to have the same results. And I think our players are smart enough to understand that. You've got to continue to really demonstrate that with the way that you're talking to the guys, the way we practice, and the way that you kind of show it on the film. But those are the things that we'll talk about. And I think, like you've talked about with other teams, we're not defending anything. We're trying to be the best version of the 2022 Rams that we can be. And if we commit to that, you give yourself an opportunity to be relevant in those conversations. But it's being totally and completely present, enjoying what you're doing, and how that can help you sustain, through the course of that journey. And that's going to be the key things that we talk about again.
So good. Sean McVay, I love the way you guys are attacking new opportunities. Thank you so much for just being the leader you are and the coach you are, and just, seeing you win a Super Bowl, being your friend, and watching you have that success and that enjoyment. But to see the way you did it and to see the way your team did it, that's what made it so, so special. So I just want to say I appreciate you and your leadership.
Well, hey, I appreciate you. Our friendship means a whole lot to me, and the consistency of our relationship through these 5 years has remained true. And it's not just after a Super Bowl. I think it means even more how consistent it was in some of those tough, adverse moments. But you've helped really, be a big part of us establishing this foundation, and want to keep it rolling.
Sean, let's close with this. What's your parting words? When you have a few losses? Because you just talked about that. And I would send you some encouragement. It's tough to have a few losses in a row, but people have losses in their life. People go through challenging times. We're going through a challenging time in the world right now. Just give some parting words, because you are such an inspiration in terms of how do you move through the losses to create better outcomes in the future?
Yeah, I think it's expending your energy on things that you can control, and being able to move on and know that even if you're in the midst of a real adverse situation, this is temporary, and it can be very temporary as long as it's handled the right way with the things that you can control. always being empathetic to everybody's perspective when you're going through it, but truly believing in the core foundational principles that you set forth. It's easy to do it when everything's going good, but when it's bad is when you have to be committed to those things even more, but also have the agility to identify, all right, what are the things that we need to address or adjust to get us out of this rut, if you're talking about sports, or to persevere through things that are way bigger than football when you're talking about, what's going on in Ukraine, and just making sure that, you're consistent in those things. And you always have that belief that's based on foundational principles. And our relationship, with our belief in our faith. And I think that's a big part of it as well.
Sean McVay, thank you so much.
Thanks, John.